I was 28 when my mother passed away. She and I had just driven down to Florida to help get me situated with my new job. We took the week to house hunt and explore St. Augustine and check out the area. And the whole week, she was battling some back pain. My mother was not the type to ever complain about anything. So it was really hard to know how much pain she really was in. But based on the fact that she had an ice pack strapped to her back the entire week, everywhere we went, every apartment we scouted out, she had an ice pack with her. And she was restless at night. She wasn't sleeping. I could hear her groaning through the night. So she was in pain. She just wouldn't say it. But the end of the week, my father came down, met up with us, and then he drove her back home to Indiana. And by the time they had gotten there, she had completely lost the use of her legs. So he immediately rushed her to be seen, and after a couple days of seeing specialists and getting tests done, they diagnosed her with multiple myeloma. Multiple myeloma is a bone marrow cancer. And what they had found was that she had a mass on her spine that was growing rapidly. So that's what was causing her back pain. But this cancer was so aggressive that within just a few weeks, it had taken her and took her home to be with her Savior. After a roller coaster of events, of course, but it took her quickly. So I returned to Florida, got back to work, and it was hard. I didn't know anybody there. I had just moved to a new city. I didn't have a local support system, and so I just immersed myself in the job and, kind of just brushed it under the rug and went on with my life. But I started to feel that I was in autopilot. I wasn't myself, and I really kind of just felt numb, and I didn't know why. And I started questioning things. After seeing somebody lose control of their body so quickly, and after watching what takes place when one passes away, it really can wake you up. And it did. It woke me up, but it also put a lot of fears in me and brought a lot of anxiety over me as to my purpose in life, and if what I was doing, really mattered. So I had a lot of doubts and I had a lot of questions about life, and after seeing how many people my mother touched at the funeral, it just put things into perspective and made me want to make a difference and to really make my life count. So then there was this guy. He had started at the facility while I was away with my mother when she was sick. And when I had returned, I noticed him. He worked in a different department, but I did notice him. However, I wanted nothing to do with boys at the time. So I got to know him through work events, and we played on a beach volleyball team together. So we got to know each other, and he pursued me and wanted to go out on dates, and I was a little hesitant, but thank God for his persistence, because I don't know what I would have done without him at that time, because I was in a very dark place, and because of who he is, he helped me in more ways than he could ever imagine. So I knew pretty quickly that he was going to be the man that I married. And we did. So we got married, and shortly after found out that we were going to have a baby. Wow, we weren't expecting it. We didn't plan it. Neither one of us were prepared for it, but we got used to the idea until we found out that we lost the baby. So I had a miscarriage, and I think that brought us both to a place of, okay, maybe this is what we want. Maybe we do want to be parents. I had focused on my career for 10 years up until this point. I had never really thought about children. So I decided I'd pray about it, and I did. I prayed earnestly over this next season and what God wanted for me, and was this my next chapter? Did he want me to be a mother? Was I supposed to continue focusing on my career? I just really wanted some direction in my next stage of life, and what my purpose was, what was going to help me make a difference and impact others the way my mother had. So I prayed, and I left it to God. And a couple months later, about 3 or 4 months later, I ended up pregnant again. So naturally, I was overwhelmed with joy. He had answered my prayers. I was gonna be a mother. And then, unfortunately, I had another miscarriage. So at this point, I was done. I didn't understand. I was confused. I had prayed over and over for God's will and thought that he had answered, and thought he said this was your purpose. You were to be a mother. And it was taken from me. And that was hard. I didn't understand. And it brought me back to my mother, because we prayed day after day over her. Elders from the church came in and prayed over her every single day. It didn't turn out how we had hoped. You know, we prayed for healing, and it turned out different than we had obviously hoped in our hearts. So I started questioning prayer. What is the purpose of prayer? And I pulled away from God. I was angry. I didn't understand. I didn't understand why I would pray so much for something and the door open only for it to close again. So I started looking for medical explanations, and I went to a hormone specialist and wanted to see if there was something wrong with me. About 3 months later, I ended up pregnant again. And wow, what? Wasn't expecting that at all. I hadn't even gotten results back from the hormone specialist. What if there was something wrong with me? I was scared. I didn't want to go through another miscarriage. I wasn't sure how to feel. But luckily, thank God, we didn't. And we ended up having a beautiful baby boy. So I was obviously overwhelmed again with joy. And it was a very bittersweet time because the emotion of, you know, holding your baby for the first time and it being so real. But also when you have complications and medical issues, it becomes challenging. I went into a dark place. I was struggling. I couldn't get control of my emotions. I cried every single day. I went through a very dark period of postpartum depression. It wasn't the kind of postpartum depression where you don't want to be around your baby. I wanted to be around my baby all the time, but I struggled because of our complications and because of his medical challenges. And, you know, when you're living in a sleeplessness fog as a mother, it can really put a toll on you. And I was also struggling with the fact that I needed advice, I needed help. And when you're at a place like that, one immediately or naturally wants to call their mother and needs their mother, because your mother knows everything about you. My mother knew me better than anybody else. She knew what I was going to do before I did it. And it was hard going through something like that without her. But I got through it, and thankfully I did find my way back to my faith. Because if I hadn't, I don't know how I would have coped through a lot of my struggles. You know, marriage, miscarriage, motherhood. These are all seasons that were hard not having a mother for. Motherhood in general, you know, there are so many doubts and fears and uncertainty that go along with being a mother. But also so much joy and so much laughter that when you don't have a mother to share that with, it can be hard. But grief takes you through different seasons and it never goes away. But that is why it's so important to have support and to have people that you can share your story with that can relate. While grief doesn't affect us all the same, we all handle it differently, but it still affects us. Having someone to talk to that can just listen and be there, that understands a little bit of what you're going through, can make all the difference in the world. My hope for my story is that I can bring encouragement for those of you out there that have been through it, that have struggled and need support. Because we are meant to do life together. We are meant to be in relationships with each other. A verse that is always in my head is, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him and He will make straight your path. We are never going to understand why things happen. But I know now that God works for the good of those that love Him. And while that verse from the Bible was very hard for me to swallow through my dark times, but when I look back on my journey, I can see Him in everything. I can see what He did for me. Because of my faith, I have changed for the good. And because I learned to depend on God and not myself. Otherwise, I wouldn't have gotten through it. My name is Rachel, and this is my story.